Hello, beautiful. This is Matilda from Coffee with Matilda, a journey to self. Today, my co-host is John Freeman, and I'm gonna let him to introduce himself, and we're gonna talk about relationship secrets. This is gonna be series of podcasts about it. So today's our first one. Hello, John.
Hi, Matilda.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm very warm. We're having an unusually hot day here, but yeah, that's pretty good. And yeah, so maybe I'll do what you suggested and introduce myself. Uh, there's quite a lot of things I could say about myself, and I don't really want to kind of dump all of them on everybody right now. Where I've had a fairly complex life, and I've gone into lots of areas, including business. I have a strand of work that I do, which is involved in business and organizational development, and I'm a trainer in spiral dynamics. But over the years, I have spent a lot of time really getting in touch with much more about how people think about all sorts of things, and how the way that we think actually drives what we do and how we live our lives. And one of the strands in that I spent a lot of time with over the years and wrote a lot about kind of 5, 6, 7 years ago, is this area of relationships and sex and everything that goes with that, and all the ways that we humans have a tendency to make life a lot more difficult than we want it to be, and not to get what we really desire. And so I'm grateful for the invitation from you to start getting back into that material and to see what we can talk about that would actually be of value to people.
Listen, I was reading your book because you have the series of books about relationship secrets. And it was actually very fun because realized you were going to college in 70s in Oxford. Oh my God, that's like time of free love and sex. How was it?
Well, that's an interesting contrast from my point of view. Is that yes, that is what was supposed to be happening, but it's actually quite central to my story and how I got here. That that was not the reality I was experiencing, uh, and I was I was a nerd. I was not really very comfortable around women. I had poor self-esteem, and so at that time, I really struggled with relationships. I would either kind of attach myself to somebody I thought that I really wanted to get to know, and then be so intense that I would cause them to run a mile. Um, and that kind of that way of being led a couple of years later to me getting into a relationship which became a marriage with somebody I should have run a mile from,
Wow.
um, because she was not really very kind of psychologically balanced, and
Mhm.
it was what I learned as a result of kind of after we split up and got divorced, by which time we also had a child. I realized really need to do something. I mustn't go there again. I've got to find out how to do life, how to do relationships in a way that will be healthy. So I spent a few years doing workshops, of all sorts of kinds, some about relationships, some about self, some about, I was learning about other things like intuition and connection and, things that we've also talked about. And so the seeds of what I eventually ended up writing, and I should say that if anybody goes out looking for relationship secrets, they won't find it, because I wrote all this stuff, but I didn't publish it. So, this conversation is really the start of maybe changing that, or producing material in a different way that people can have access to. But that was a long journey, and I feel I learned a lot about what it is to be a human in relationship, because one of the things about going to workshops in those days is that for every one man in a workshop, there would be 10 women. So I spent a lot of time listening to women. And, from that point of view, I feel like I have a good understanding of a woman's experience and perspective on relationships. But of course, I was learning about being a man, at least what it is for John Freeman to be a man, which isn't the same necessarily as what it is for
any other man.
For Bill Smith to be a man. That may be a completely different thing.
I really loved about it in this way that you were saying, when you read this book, I want you to have what you want. There is no wrong and right, and made me really think about lots of things. And the book was saying, my goal is to help you get the best from whatever choices you want. And it really teaches, I think, what you really come to the core of the issue of, first you have to create a beautiful relationship with yourself. And once you have that relationship with yourself, you can have a relationship with others. This is not a book that, find a partner. It was a book about finding yourself, and through that, you're going to find yourself, your best version with your parents, a best version with your child, a best version with the partner that you want to be with. So I think, and then you say there is no formula, you are the formula. And it's really true, because if you want to have a different type of a partner, you really need to work on yourself first to attract the other type of a partner that you're looking for. Or even if you're looking for a different type of a relationship with your parents or with your children, you need to work on yourself first to realize maybe certain communication skills you need to add on, or the way you handle things has to change. Then you would have a different type of relationship with your parents and children. So it's all you.
For sure, yeah. I mean, everything starts from who you are, and the first place I suggest that people should start with this is to get in touch with all the places where they've decided that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because so many people, certainly it's where I started, I think by far the majority of people are carrying around a whole load of voices in their heads of, this is how life is supposed to be lived, this is what sort of person you're supposed to be, this is what you should think about money, this is what you should think about work, and this is what you should think about sex and relationships. And all of that is just stuff that surrounds us and which we take on as if it's ours when it isn't ours. So getting rid of that sense of, I have to listen to other people and I have to do what other people think is the way to behave, is also part of getting out of the notion that whenever you have a feeling or an experience or a thought that would be different from what everybody else is saying, from what all the voices in your head are saying, we kind of get into a space where, I must be wrong for that. And that's 180 degrees the reverse of what's needed. It's actually having the map upside down, because what's right for you is what's right for you.
Exactly. And you talk about sex a lot in I want to understand, what is your relation with sex? So why there was a lot of emphasis on sex? What was your take on it?
Okay, so for me personally, I would say sex was, it started off as really important, because not only because I think I had a relatively strong kind of sex drive, but what it was really about was a kind of a need, an internal need that I thought would be met by having sex. And it took me quite a number of years to discover that that really was never what completely would feel whole and satisfying for me. And so that was a gradual journey, and I got more and more comfortable with my relationship with sex and with how much sex I wanted. And it was maybe, I don't know, I was probably past 50 when it started to reach something which was truly, for me, some kind of equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
And it might sound like that's age, but it wasn't. It wasn't age. It was a gradual process of change within me, about how I saw sex and what I wanted from sex.
Yeah, very interesting. So I'm going to explain to the listeners so that I have the concept behind it. When you start reading the book, John asks very amazing question. I mean, a question that kind of, for me, was a little bit, I was a little bit shy about, even from myself. So you ask, how much sex in a relationship is good for you, that you're going to be content? How much sex you think it's good for you? And I was reading this when I was alone, and there was no one there, but I felt I'm shy about myself. I'm shy from myself. It's very funny. And I never thought about it that way. I never thought how much sex is enough. In general, I always, you know, you read in magazines, you watch movies, you go to therapy, like couple go to therapy, or marriage couple, they go to therapy. Oh, you've been married this many years, or I don't know, once a week is a good enough, or I don't know, once in 10 years is good enough. uh, you really don't really think about what your body needs, what you think it's right for you. You're always thinking, oh, what your partner wants. I think more women think in that direction, or what society is telling you, what your parents told you, what your culture is telling you, what movies are telling you, what your therapist is telling you. But you're not putting the time to really understand who you are in relation to, in this particular example, sex. And yesterday made me really think, from the culture that I'm coming. This is a very taboo. My culture, I'm Armenian from Iran, so it's very complex. This idea and conversation is very complex, actually, for us, because it's a taboo concept. And in a lot of religions, and actually in a lot of other cultures, it's a little bit taboo. And the thing that it's something is very taboo, but you sit down and you think about it for yourself, opens a lot of doors. I'm sure your intention wasn't about sex. The intention was you being very real with yourself to understand who you are. Because if I really think about it, there's lots of things I do, not necessarily because I feel it's right or it's wrong. I feel because that's how it should be. in my culture, again, coming back to my culture, you don't say no to your parents. You act very differently to your parents because kind of it's a service you give them because they serve you. You give a service. It's a little bit a funny dynamic. You always have to take care of them. You always have to be nice to them. Because that's how it's supposed to be. You don't say no to people a lot because you need to be a nice person. I don't know, I can give you a lot of examples of my culture that not necessarily I think what is right for me. I just do it because this is how it's supposed to be done. And also, I realized in lots of cultures, so yesterday night, again, I was thinking, in lots of cultures, for example, I worked in Switzerland, Swiss culture, a lot of people do a lot of things, not because they think it's right, no, because society or the government wants them to do and they don't even question it. For example, you shouldn't put garbage Sundays outside because you're going to bother your neighbor. You cannot be kind of outstanding in Switzerland. You need to blend with the crowd because being outsider, it's not something exciting. So that culture creates bans actually a lot of individual expressions because it's not proper. And I feel like people will feel they're not expressed because they're coming from that kind of a culture. So I felt like every culture, if you look at it and if you want to analyze it, in some areas, if it's not sex, it's different areas that they're not doing that thing because they feel it's right for them. They're doing it because some magazines told them, society told them, and it's actually fascinating, John.
It is.
You're not understanding yourself. You're not understanding your own needs. And you're performing based on someone else's opinion.
Yes. So, like you say, there is a big difference between cultures, and that frames all of our lives because we all grow up with parents or in a cultural environment, or we live in somewhere that we get used to. And I mean, I'm not going to talk about spiral dynamics right now, but spiral dynamics does talk a great deal about why cultures develop as they do and why the differences show up between them. And it also talks about kind of what shows up in us as individuals. And there's one fairly core thread in spiral dynamics, or one core dynamic, which is that all individuals and all cultures, they have to find their place in, there's I as an individual and there's we. And some cultures are very we oriented, and some cultures are much more expressive and do what the hell you like. And there's all sorts of different flavors, and that also applies to individuals. One of the things that I think is interesting around sex and relationships that kind of comes from that is that you also get some fairly significant dynamics that show up in that space. You talk about the fact that you come from a culture which really would not talk about sex and in which it's relatively taboo. I would say that it's actually, even the cultures which talk about sex, there's a difference between talking about it as a thing, like you can talk about what's going on, or you can say what you think about this film or whatever, and you can talk about sex in a context that isn't about you. I don't think that there are many people who are truly comfortable talking about sex in terms of what does it really mean to me? What do I feel? Because it's a very vulnerable area. So people will often say, they'll say the same thing that everybody else is saying, or they'll say the same thing that a group of people are saying within that environment, where it seems like, yes, I'm part of a crowd, and it's safe for me to have that point of view or to express that point of view. But it's not always what people really feel for themselves. And in a lot of cases, like you were describing in kind of coming up with that question in my book, it's like, actually, I've never even thought that I could ask that question.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I was like, what? And you know what came? So the first thought was like, oh, this is a book for men. I mean, the audience are men, the readers are men, because I read a lot of, relationship books for women. How to find the guy. I don't know. Women are from here, men are from I don't know where. I mean, I've been in a dating zone for a gazillion years, so I've done my fair share of reading interesting books like that. But they were geared for women, and the sex part is always a very little section, and they most talk about, oh, you have to prolong when you like the guy, and this kind of things. But yours was like at the beginning of the book, and I'm like, whoa, this is like it was very interesting to see the difference. But then when you read the book, when you continue reading the book, you realize this is not about sex. This is about you understanding yourself. And when you bring the sex subject in the very beginning of the book, you feel like, okay, honestly, how much of myself I know? How much of my needs as a human being I know? And it's very fascinating that you really need to honor yourself if you're living life and you want to have the right partners in life, or you want to have the right relationships with your coworkers, with your parents, with your kids. It really starts honoring who you are and honoring what the needs are for you. And sex is just one of the needs. You have lots of other needs that maybe it's not very taboo to talk about, but still we don't even think about it. I can assure there's a lot of mothers that they don't even carve enough me time for themselves because they're always busy with their kids at home. They're always giving. They're giving their time to the husband, and but there's no me time there. And throughout that process, when you don't honor yourself, you're gonna lose your I think you lose yourself. And where's the joy there?
Well, you
Where's the
do. Well, yeah, and so not only does that become joyless, the reality is that the more people lose themselves in that kind of way, the less they actually have to bring to the relationship
exactly.
that's real. So, I mean, for women who are in that space, yeah, maybe there will be if they're in motherhood, maybe there will be a huge amount of give and take with the children, but finding the place where that can also be the case between her and a husband, if there's no kind of me space that exists in the context of that relationship, then it's very difficult for that to have any richness. And one of the challenges with this is that because so many men are raised to think that sex is the bit that matters, that they don't even know what they're missing. They don't even know what they're not getting in the relationship, because provided, if their perception is, we're going to have sex once a week on Saturday night and that's what should happen, then it just becomes a biological process. But the thing that there's this huge kind of split in a way between what most cultures are saying. You know, if you watch movies, nearly all cultures will do movies that are about kind of boy meets girl, boy loves girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back, and everybody is really happy
Happy.
because I finally found the girl, right? So, you know, this is a template story that you can find running in hundreds of different versions, probably in every language in which film is made. I mean, you know, I haven't seen it in all languages, but I've seen enough foreign movies and watched the subtitles, and basically that message is there. The whole point of all of this is for us to find the one. And that's like, well, you might, if you're lucky, you might find somebody with whom, yeah, we have that potential depth, that we really feel something special, and we've got we're not just sex partners, we're deep friends, we've got something going on that is that love relationship. But if you don't know what comes next, it's very difficult to sustain that and turn that into something which is going to, you know, to last for a couple of decades. And so, I mean, you know, there's a lot that's happened in the world where the notion of what is the right kind of relationship or what is the wrong kind of relationship, you know, that people can get on whatever the apps are called, Tinder and Grindr, and they can have kind of instant sex and there's no relationship, or they can go out to a bar and they can meet somebody, and generally, you know, one of the things that looks like is, well, if I get drunk enough, then I won't care who I have sex with, so I can have sex. A lot of that is not, it's kind of, it's not really meeting people's internal needs. And unless you know what your internal needs, how are you going to find, what do I really need to do to be what is true for me? And for some people that can be, actually, I don't think sex is important to me in this life. I'm quite happy being on my own. I'm quite happy to live as a single person for the whole of my life. And at the same time, you've got the voices that say, well, I'm supposed to have a relationship, or you've got mother who says, you know, when are you going to settle down and give me grandchildren? I mean, all those pressures are real. They're all out there. But if what you truly want is to be yourself and live on your own and fulfill whatever things you would do from that space, that's okay. And finding out how to make that okay for yourself and for all the other versions. I mean, I know nothing about what it is like to be gay. I have a gay son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know I don't really know what it's like to be him, to understand his reality. I know there's a big thing in how people categorize how we feel about sex that says you are gay or you are straight, and that's kind of, well, and there may be a few people who are bisexual. Actually, when you look at the real evidence, a lot of people live somewhere along that spectrum, that there may be a little bit more open, if they identify as straight, they're maybe a little bit more open to a gay relationship, or they're, you know, they can be anywhere along that scale. Well, how on earth are you going to find out what's true for you? What will make you happy? What will fulfill your life? I mean, I've known people who lived in threesomes. Some of them lasted for, you know, quite a long time. You know, they were like a three-way marriage. I don't know any. I don't know any that lasted longer than a decade. Not personally, but there probably are. You know, there's lots of different ways of doing things, but
But that's complex.
they all take self-knowledge, and they all take, well, there's going to be stuff that comes up in that. You know,
Yeah.
how are you going to work with that? How are you going to get conscious about it so that, like in a it's typical if you've got a three-way relationship, you're going to have to deal with the kind of jealousy envy dynamic
Yeah, I
of,
don't want to deal with that. It's too much for me. I'm an only child. I like my toy and I like it for me.
well, totally. I'm just saying that, you know, whatever you are
Yeah.
in, you're going to have to find out how to deal with the dynamics of that. How is it affecting me? What do I want? How do I deal with the emotions that it brings up when things are not going the way that I think they are? What are the kinds of conversations that I really need to be
Yeah.
having with my partner? But firstly, what are the conversations I have with myself to get clear on what that where I'm coming from when I have that conversation with the partner?
That's actually very interesting. And I'm telling you, this question since yesterday has been making me think. Yeah, I'm thinking about lots of things right now. Lots of things that I've done in my life, not necessarily uh, I've done it because I wanted to. I've done it because I thought that's the right thing to do. Besides, I mean, I think those are cultural or yeah, cultural things. So, this question was very amazing because it really opens up, it shakes you and opens up and like, okay, so where I'm standing in the world with myself. Because I feel like this is about when once you really realize your sexual relationship with yourself, I think you understand your relationship with the world, and obviously you're going to understand your needs for a particular partnership as well. But first, you need to really understand yourself, and once that's done, you can connect it with other things in the world, and it's a very nice entry to self discovery. I think it's an entry point
Yes,
because it's
it
a
is.
secret thing to yourself. I mean, you can say to lots of other people, oh, I don't like this, or I like this sexually, or I do this sexually, or I don't talk about sex, or whatever. So it's a really secret thing. It's really between you and your soul and your body. I hope the listeners um, they use their soul in it as well. Otherwise, it can go to a depression as well. No, if the soul is not in
Yeah,
it.
indeed. I mean, you know, I think the core message, and you know, it may have seen I was kind of going off into wild areas talking
Yeah.
about threesomes, but the thing is, like, it is about finding out, okay, what do I want?
Hmm.
What do I need? And what's going to make me happy? And I'm talking about something extreme because I want people to get that there isn't a judgment about this. There isn't a
Yeah.
way that you are supposed to be. You are who you are. You have your history, you have the kind of soul that you incarnated with, you have whatever. You certainly, you have the kind of body and the bodily experiences. I mean, a lot of the trouble for all of us in many areas comes because we make our decisions here,
Hmm.
and actually there's no place more so than with relationships and sex where the question needs to be answered here, and probably somewhere lower than that. It needs to be answered from the body and not from the mind, because the mind is often really confused about this stuff.
Very nice, John. I mean, I hope the listeners will take this main message that whatever you want to do in life, even in I mean you understand yourself better in relation with others, so you understand lots of things about yourself. Being in relationship, the best part of it, to understand different elements about yourself in a relationship. um Main point is to really understand who you are. When you understand who you are and understand your needs, then you can go and find the right partner. Then you can be a better daughter or better son for your parents, or a better parent for your kids, or a co-worker for your colleagues. So the key is to really understand who you are and what your needs are, and to be very honest and comfortable with yourself. So I'm going to practice that question again and again to get to that comfort level, because still, yeah, I guess I'm not very comfortable with myself when it comes to taboo subjects. And it's so, I'm programmed. I left Iran when I was 18. I mean, I lived longer maybe outside of my country, but somehow I'm still programmed that way. Yeah, I have to think
Yeah,
about it. I have to think
you can take the girl out of Iran, but you can't take Iran out of the girl. Is
about
the way that, you know, the way that shows up. And I think what, you know, what I hope we maybe can do in the future conversations we have is maybe just kind of take one of these aspects and dive deeper and take people more on the journey of, okay, I'm going to find a bit more out about myself in this area and this
it.
area, and what shows up when I do that, and what are the questions that we face.
Very good. Today, I think it was kind of an overview of the secrets, relationship secrets. And next time, we're going to go more details about different subjects. One subject, actually.
It would be
Very
good.
good. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, John, for your time. I'm sure I've learned a lot, and I'm sure listeners learned a lot. And we will get back to them next week.
Okay, thanks for the invitation. It's fun having these conversations.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao.
Bye bye.